starting to get a little nervous. I'm starting to sweat. That's because I am going into the principal's office with two principals today.
And here we go. Be sure to visit soundmind.app, peachjar.com, and nicholsstrategies.com. Advocating for public education, sharing our stories, and celebrating our schools, students, and staff. From crisis communications to media relations, social media, and everything in between. We're here to give you the best strategies, tools, and techniques to help you help others. Welcome to the School PR Podcast, brought to you by Peachjar, SoundMind, and Nichols Strategies. Here's your hosts, Matthew Jennings and Ryan Ferran.
All right, welcome back to the School PR Podcast. Everything you wanted to know and didn't want to know about being a principal. Thrilled to have two guests that I know very well. Two doctors in the house, two doctors and a patient. I am the patient today and I cannot wait. Dr. Angie Dillman from Arcadia High School and Dr. Michelle Liu, also from Arcadia High School. And Angie is the principal at Arcadia, Michelle assistant principal, but just got hired as principal of Walnut High School. So, ladies, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Wow, you guys are in unison. You guys should do a podcast together.
Well, I was just going to say, we are so rusty at this podcast thing that we spoke at the same time without knowing that we need to take turns. So this will be a rough one for us.
We were in good practice there for 6 months.
Yeah.
So good. So for people that don't know, you guys have a podcast in the principal's office, which I am your number one subscriber, rated you on iTunes, did all that stuff. It was great. And then you guys got distracted with life and work, but in the principal's office. And before we get started, I guess let's just do a little introduction. Angie, we'll start with you and kind of your career, how you got to where you're at, where you started, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Angela Dillman. Everyone calls me Angie, and I am currently the principal of Arcadia High School, but I kind of got into education through an unpredictable path. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, and there really just I didn't have a lot of examples of different professions. So I didn't, when my high school calculus teacher told me that I should think about being an engineering major, I literally asked, on a train, like a train engineer? I don't know what that is. So not the most sophisticated back in high school, but I also, right at that time, my dad, for my high school graduation gift, bought me 2 plane tickets to Europe. So a friend and I spent the summer backpacking in Europe, and I just fell in love with traveling, as you can imagine, like how I just described life in my small town in rural Ohio, just seeing these phenomenal cities and how, different people lived and different cultures developed. It was really inspiring to me. So, I, kind of did everything right. As soon as I graduated from high school, I went straight to college and I graduated in 4 years. And, that puts me at 17 straight years of school. And I knew I needed a break, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So since I love to travel, I thought I could teach English as a second language abroad. So I was a teacher in Poland and in Italy. And in Poland, by the end of the first 30 days, I had absolutely fallen in love with teaching. I thought, this is amazing. This is how I can, imagine spending my life. I felt excited to go to work every day, drained by the end of the day. And that hasn't stopped, fast forward almost 30 years. And that's exactly the same. So I fell in love with teaching, and I taught in Europe for a while. And then after living in Italy, going back to Preble County, Ohio, didn't feel quite as exciting. So I moved to California and started my teaching credential at UC Riverside, which is where Michelle got her teaching credential. And then I started my first teaching job in Corona Norco, which is also where Michelle started her teaching career. Although we did not know each other, we had no idea, we were years apart. But I was a history teacher at Norco High School for 8 years. I absolutely loved it, but wanted to move closer to Los Angeles. So in 2010, I was very fortunate enough to become a history teacher in Arcadia, and it was really a life-changing move. I was given opportunities that opened my eyes to skills I never thought I would have, and just, gave me a way to explore, different passions and drives. So I was activities director here. My first administrative job was in Arcadia as the assistant principal at Foothills Middle School. And then I wanted to make the leap to principal, and Arcadia is a small district. So I looked outside of the district and I was a principal in Mountain View, in the Bay Area. And then when an opportunity opened up back in Southern California and in Arcadia, I jumped in the chance to come back, where I was assistant principal here at the high school. And then 5 years ago became the principal, and love every single day, every joyous, difficult, amazing, wonderful, tiring day.
Two quick comments before we get to Michelle.
Sure.
First of all, your dad's graduation gift, incredible. That's not, you don't hear that every day. Here you go. Here are 2 tickets to Europe. Go have fun, kid.
Yeah.
And then one of my greatest memories is when you, this is not the greatest memory when you left, but when you were gone at Mountain View, I didn't mean it like that. You were talking to, I think it was JT. I was in JT's office at the high school, and you had to admit something to me, and it was painful for you, but it was the joy of my life. Do you? Would you want to share?
Do you want me to share it? So
Please.
Ryan and I love to rib each other. And I really like working with Ryan, but I would say we both can have the tendency to wake up on the wrong side of the bed sometimes, and definitely can, when stress is high, you definitely know it. Michelle can attest to it. Ryan can attest to it. So when I was in Mountain View, I was working with a different district, tons of amazing people there. Also had a new PIO. Ryan was the only, district communications person I had ever worked with up until then. And man, was I so thankful for Ryan after working with someone else. You are amazing at your job. You're supportive. You're easy to work with. And I appreciate you deeply.
He just tricked you into doing that and recording it and now broadcasting it to everybody.
There's not really a podcast I want to get to. That's all I had for today. We're
Sure.
all
Exactly. He's going to end it now.
I totally deserve it.
It did break up a little. Ironically, it did break up a little bit. Hopefully the recording is okay. But that did make my day, is that you had an appreciation that you didn't realize you had. And the other fun truth is that we discovered several years ago, I told you, I said, you're not going to like this, but we are way more similar than we are different.
That is a truth. That is a truth. Our birthdays are not too far apart, so I think there's something in the zodiac that aligned our personalities.
You are way more Taurus. You were born a week late. I think you're a Taurus as well.
Yes, I'm technically a Gemini, but I can have a bit of a forceful personality.
And then later I'll tell my favorite story, my first interaction with you.
You do not have to do that, Ryan. You do not.
I do have to tell that one. I tell people that story all the time. It's my favorite story, but look where we are now.
I know, it's so true. It's so true.
Michelle, I can't believe when I was talking to you the other day, when you got this exciting new job offer, I was very depressed, but I was asking, how long have you been in Arcadia? And I was stunned when you said 5 years. That was kind of shocking to me. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, well, and also, when there's a pandemic, that happens in the middle of all that. So I've been here for 5 years, but it's funny listening to Angie tell her story, which I've heard before, but it always strikes me in how we had a lot of similarities in how untraditional our paths were to coming to education and then definitely to becoming administrators. But my parents were both elementary school teachers. They're retired. They've been retired for 10 years. And of course, I always said, I will never be a teacher because I quite literally grew up in the classroom. There's pictures of me when I'm like a toddler, 2 years old, and I'm at the chalkboard, young people won't know what I'm talking about, but there's those blackboards and they use the chalk and you write on them. And there's me in my diapers at my mom's chalkboard. So I always said I never wanted to do it. And then of course, fast forward and I went to college. I went to UC Riverside like Angie. And I went, got my bachelor's and I was like, I don't know exactly what I wanted to do. And my dad, being the teacher he is, he's like, why don't you substitute teach in Corona Norco Unified? That's a good job and figure it out. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I went and I substitute taught there. And one of the first days, that was back in the day when to get a sub job, they would call you in the morning. So I would sleep next to my phone because they would call me at, 6 a.m. to offer me a job. And this was also a landline. So sleeping next to the landline. And I remember one time they called and they said, oh, we have this job. It's at this school and it's a job for students with disabilities. And I said, okay, just tell me what time to be there. And they're like, well, I just want to let you know, it's like for students with disabilities. I'm like, okay, well, let me give it a try. And she says, a lot of people, they might be uncomfortable going to a school like that. And of course, in me, being me, I wasn't uncomfortable. I was intrigued. I'm like, what is this school? I have to go here. So I went to this school and I walked into this class and it was a preschool class and it was for students with disabilities. And it felt like I was walking into this whole new world. I didn't have a lot of experience working with students with disabilities or, friends of the family that had disabilities. So I didn't really have a reference point, which I think in hindsight was really good because I was open. I was a sponge, and it was a really eye-opening experience for me to work with students who have challenges, and yet they were the happiest. They were thankful. They were excited. And so after that, I became the long-term sub for that school. And I decided to go back and get my teaching credential. And so I got my teaching credential in moderate severe students with disabilities with moderate severe disabilities. And I worked in Corona Norco. I got my first job in elementary school. And I worked for first through third grade. So the really little ones. We did a lot of foundational skills. And of course, same thing. I said, I'm never working at high school, never going there. And then I got the opportunity to go and work in the high school, and I loved it. High school's my jam. I really love high school. There's a specific program that's for students with disabilities, particularly moderate to severe, and that's called the Adult Transition Program. And it really helps students when they're 18 to 22 work on their life skills. And so it's a community-based program. We take them to work. We work on social skills, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And I did that for 14 years. And I always said, I'm never going to go into administration because I love my job so much. But there was a turning point for me when I went to the West Bank and I worked with the Palestinian government and their education department. And I was working with teachers and with administrators and just really educating them about autism and about students with disabilities and how to support them. And that was kind of the turning point for me. And I thought, maybe I could do the administration thing. And then, 2019, I'm sending out my applications everywhere and I'm a teacher and I'm like, I'm not getting any responses, right? Like, no one is even calling me for an interview. And I remember this very distinctly because my daughter at the time was graduating from college. So I was up north at her graduation and I had this I was doing graduation things with her and I had this a couple of missed voicemails. And so I'm like, oh, this is weird. So when I had a moment, I checked it and it was from somebody from HR from Arcadia saying, hey, we'd like you to come in for an interview. And at the time I'm like, what? Arcadia? Because I had sent out so many, I just had sent them out everywhere. I'm like, this is interesting. And so I said, sure. It was the Monday after I was coming back from my daughter's graduation. And I looked and I remember going home and I was looking at the schools and looking at the district and I was like, oh, this is a big deal. Like this school's awesome. This district is amazing. And I said, I'm really nervous. I don't know what's going on. And then, of course, I, came to the interview. Angie was there because I was replacing her in the assistant principal's role as she became the principal of Arcadia High School. And I cannot tell you how amazing it's been the last 5 years. Yeah. And I think working in Arcadia, there's tons of opportunity, like Angie said. And I'm going to give a special shout out to Angie, just working with Angie and having her have faith in me and see in me something, even though I had only had teaching experience. It's a big leap to go from teacher to assistant principal. It takes a lot of risk and a lot of faith in the person doing the hiring. And so I've told her this many times, but I'm going to tell her on record that it's just her, taking a chance on me really allowed me to have all these opportunities. And then now, of course, as Ryan mentioned, I will be moving on to be a principal of my own school. So I'm very excited and grateful for everything here.
That's
You're
awesome.
ready for it.
I feel ready. I'm ready
You're
because
ready.
I was here. Yeah.
So we'll bring Angie back down to earth if we get into some more stories. Working together.
I had to balance out all that stuff in the beginning, Ryan.
Thank you.
I mean,
It is interesting, though, what you said about the transition from teacher to administrator. And I feel like I'd love to get both of your thoughts on this, because I feel like that is such a big decision, and you're in the classroom for years and you love it, and you didn't be like, that's what you wanted to do. You're in your jam, you're loving it. And then it's either a shoulder tap or somebody is curious about it. What do you think about administration? Then it kind of, then you start thinking about it. Angie, what was it like for you making the transition from teacher to admin, and why did you pursue that path?
Yeah, I mean, just like Michelle, I thought I would never be an administrator, never wanted to be an administrator. Where I first worked at Norco High School, every school runs differently. And at Norco, they would ask for volunteers to take tickets at the CIF game. When sports keep going and being successful, they have games that they didn't plan on. So they would, kind of last minute need someone to take tickets on a Saturday night. And I volunteered all the time. A lot of my students played sports, and I was happy to be there. And I remember seeing, the whole administration team there, and I'm like, gosh, I volunteered to do this once. They have to be at every single event, and just thinking how much time it took to be an administrator. And then thinking, I took care of most things in my classroom, and I remember writing one referral and just thinking they have to handle everything that teachers can't handle. What a terrible job. But for me, it was my last year of teaching when I became the first AVID teacher at Arcadia High School. And I ran a program. I got to build it. I got to design it. I got to recruit. I got to work with parents in a different way and do fundraisers. And I just thought oh, wow, I am able to do all of these things that I never even considered. And I saw a slightly different side of administration where wow, you can really make things happen for students and staff. You can really make it happen. So it was after that I became ASB director. And it was the same thing, just how can we make processes and procedures and relationships better for all of our students and our staff?
Yeah, I feel like the classroom's amazing. And that's what, in my position as communications, I always was jealous of teachers because they got to know the students so well. They had their relationship, and we're just kind of in the district office. But that's what I love about my internship, is where I get to work with a group of students. And what's even better for us is we'll have them for 3 or 4 years. So we don't have them every day, but we see them once a week. We go to events. But that connection is tough to lose, I imagine, going from teacher to admin, but you get to impact so many more kids on a global campus, district-wide level. That impact really, really makes a difference. Michelle, what about you? What was the big switch for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit about the first time I went, and I was in a role where, as you're saying, it's wow, I can help spread information and give support, specifically at that time working with students that some of the teachers and administrators were unsure of how to work with, students with disabilities, students with autism in particular, and to see their excitement and to realize now they're going to take what they know and they're going to go back to their schools and they're going to tell their teachers. And then that's kind of that ripple effect. I remember when I was considering jumping from teacher to administration. And of course, one of the things the principal at the school where I was, and I'd have conversations with her and she's like, it's a lot more time and it's a lot more this, just like Angie was saying. And I think I was understanding that, but she also said something too that really struck me and stuck with me, because I kept telling her, I was like, yeah, like I'm just afraid that I won't have the same impact, right? Like I'm afraid that, I won't be able to affect kids the same. And she looked at me and she said, no, Michelle, you get to do more of that, which is exactly what Angie was saying. And she's right, and at first I was kind of like, that's what, you're just saying that, and of course, now that I'm in my position, same thing. I've had so many opportunities to like look and see and identify even small ways and small gaps of where kids need more support, and being able to, provide and fill that need. Sometimes large programs, sometimes small programs, but every single thing matters, because I know for me, that connection piece comes with kids who say like, man, thanks for doing that, right? Or thanks for having this here for us. So I think that is, on a personal note for me, my daughter, I raised my daughter on my own, and she was like in college. She was on her way to being a productive adult. And I think that's when I could also say to myself, like, I have the time. I have the time to invest in something else. Whereas before, I didn't have that time to invest, and I didn't want to. Like, I wanted to invest in my students and my daughter. So those were the two things for me.
That's awesome. It is so much more time. You guys are always at every event. I mean, somebody's got to be somewhere. In any high school in America, there's events, 4 events every night of the week and on the weekend. So it is a lot more time commitment for sure. And going back to what Angie said, I think for people wanting to get into admin, be a principal, kind of what you said, like I just raised my hand, I was volunteering, they needed help. And so that's, when you're visible, you're willing to help out, you're there after school, you can start to see how the bigger picture works, how to organize events. And then they're like, oh, this person would be a great administrator. And next thing you know, somebody's saying, you should really think about this. That's awesome. You guys were Angie, you had a little bit prior to the pandemic, Michelle just before, but you guys went through the heart of the pandemic, which is like, you should add like 6-7 years to your principalships because you survived the pandemic, which was just incredible. I know it's been a while since we were in the middle of that, but that was such a big deal. I feel like everyone learned a lot about themselves, their communities, their students, and probably more than we wanted to know. Any major lessons from you guys, especially, this is a communications podcast. When we weren't in person, we had to do virtual. Communications was just so important. We saw so many school districts hiring communications professionals because we're like, oh my God, who's going to do this? We need to stay connected. This is our only connection. Any takeaways, Angie, from the pandemic, especially with the communication lens?
Yeah, absolutely. Communication was everything. And I think it's one of like my laments about communication in general is that there never seems to be enough, but you do definitely get an idea of what's needed, what's clear. And during the pandemic, one of the things that I think our team did that was most impactful was we had daily, every single day in that 2020, the second semester, we had check-ins, we would have topics, but there was an administrator and a counselor available to go over topics, to answer questions. We would use questions in the chat to update our FAQs. It was constantly updated. We were always divvying up work amongst our team, but just being accessible and available, because you can't pick up a phone and call someone and have that human connection. It made everyone feel so distant, and us just being on screen for 30 minutes a day to talk about summer school or registering for classes or all the things that we do to run a school, being live, being there, being in people's homes, it was the connection that people needed. But it also put things into perspective because we have 3,000 students, 6,000 parents, more family members. And every night, depending on the topic, we would have a couple of 100 people logging in. So to me, that means that thousands of people were reading our communication, your communication, Ryan, and it was everything they needed. But then for the people who needed more, we were able to provide more. But still, there were those few who didn't feel like it was enough, and which is the disappointing part. But if you look at the big picture, the variety of communication and the personalization of the communication is what I think is my big takeaway.
Yeah, I feel like you guys had so many opportunities for those virtual webinars and come on, like, you don't have to, but you're more than welcome to. And I think that kept people so connected. And that's like a next level communication that we can't do as communicators. Like we can send out emails and things like that, but you're organizing the people to have some kind of connection, whether it's virtual or not, which is much more meaningful than getting, here's a newsletter, here's an update, whatever it may be. But you found a way to connect people still in the pandemic, which was incredible through that series that you guys did. And I think it really helped. Us as school PR people, we always kind of get a little disillusioned that we do the communications. We do most of the communications for the district when in essence, we are a smaller of the fraction because we do big district communications, but principals, you guys are sending stuff out all the time. So I always remind our colleagues, it's like you need to know that they know what they're doing, how to do it best way, and kind of that feedback channel, because really the principals, you guys do way more communicating than we'll ever do because there's more of a need to do it on it just with basic updates, schedules, bell schedules, day off, half days, that sort of thing. Michelle, how about you in the pandemic? You're going through your first year or two as an administrator and right in the middle of that.
Yeah, well, I'm also going to talk about those daily communications we did, and for a couple of reasons, and I'll speak from someone that maybe is listening to this and thinking of becoming a new administrator, and they're wants to dive into that. But this year I was hired in 2019. I started in August, and then of course we went to on the pandemic. There was the pandemic. And I was a brand new administrator, right? Like straight from the classroom, like the year before I was in the classroom. And I remember when we were talking as a team about like, how are we going to talk to people and what are we going to say to them when honestly, we don't really have too much to say. We just, but we want them to know we're there. And I remember Angie, when she was telling us like, hey, I have this idea about, talking every day. And I remember in the beginning, just feeling like terrified as a brand new administrator, thinking I'm going to be exposed, online to a bunch of people who are probably worried and concerned where I don't have the answers. And this feels really scary. And I remember the first time, as Angie mentioned, we were paired. It was two people. It was like an administrator and a counselor. And we were paired up and we had a schedule. And I remember the first time I went on, it was during that maybe, the third week or after we knew we weren't going to come back for the rest of the year. It was that first week. And I'm watching and I'm looking at, how many people are joining, and it got up to like 300, 350. And I was just like inside, like sweating, but we started talking. And the nice thing is we had done a really great job as a team. Angie led this where we kind of it was very formulaic, which I liked. And I think that was really important. And so I would say like any kind of communication where it feels risky like that, where you're going into something and you are making these connections and it could feel like a wild card, having a formula really, really helped us in terms of the formatting of our meetings. And so anyway, went in there and started talking, following these things. And what I found, a couple of things. First is that, you don't always have to have the answer. When people are asking things and there were times, and I distinctly remember saying, we don't know, like it changes every day. And we are making note that this is what is concerning to you and we want to follow up with you, but we also want to say like, we don't know. And I think what I learned personally as a leader, a new leader, was being honest and vulnerable sometimes is okay. And people will accept it if they know that you're really, we're on the same team. We're all working towards the same things, and they'll be okay with it. And then also just being accessible. I think the accessibility was something that people really appreciated. I remember even up to a year or so after we did that, when I would talk to parents in the hallways or at other meetings, so many of them said to me, hey, I remember when you guys came online every single day, and we really appreciated that. And, I definitely think that was Andrew's brainchild, but it's been something I've taken to heart when it comes to the way I interact with parents and the way I interact with the community. Like, you can never over communicate. right? Being accessible, even if it's just optional, right? Even it's like, hey, show up if you want, is so important. And being honest and real, especially in tough times when it's like we don't know and we're also scared. I think I remember saying that, like, we're also really nervous. And people respond to that.
Michelle, I would love to take credit, but I believe that JT first had the idea that he thought we should have regular check-ins. I just took full ownership over it and made and forced us to do it.
Yeah,
but
you did do the forcing, because I think we were
did the forcing. Yes,
because it was terrifying.
Yeah, but it was important.
For people that don't really know, so you guys basically did like parent check-ins every night of the week, and I think you sliced it into different groups, like freshmen or something. So explain real quick, how did you guys format
in different times of the day? So like it would be a topic. It could be like, let's say this week is seniors, because that's what's most pressing, because it was like, about college and there were all these updates going on. So like we would have like Monday, we would do like maybe a noon. And then Tuesday it was 4, then Wednesday 5, then Thursday 6, then Friday 7, or something like that, where we mix it up in different times of the day. And I think we found 6 o'clock was kind of our sweet spot, but different people came on in different times. It was just, we wanted to, so that was formulaic, like every day had a certain time of the day. We recorded them, we posted them, and then it was topic based, and it was the most important information that people were seeking was more counseling driven, like academic counseling, summer school, college, and registering for classes for next year. Those, and we had a million other topics, but those were the biggest demands.
And then what we did too is we every day when we would send the link, we would send the link every day, like, hey, we're going to have this today at blah, 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 blah. And we would send a link for our FAQ form. So that was the other thing that I've learned that I've also used and implemented in other kinds of scenarios where, we send the form beforehand. That way we had a chance to look at the questions. So every day as a team, we'd look over the questions and we'd look, okay, this is a really common question. We're going to answer that. We're going to say, hey, thank you for bringing this. We'll answer it live. And then what we also did is that we also updated our FAQ document. We had a document that we posted online, and we also linked into these emails we sent, and we would color code it so that our
anything that was new
would be there.
So like it's a lot of repetitive information, but like when we posted something brand new to that week, it was highlighted in yellow, because some people just needed to know what to look for. And I think that was probably a suggestion from a parent.
Yeah, maybe. I don't even remember where it came from. All
weird.
I know is that
parents suggested something during the pandemic. I just went back in development.
I can definitely highlight. That is a great suggestion that I can put into action.
Yeah, we had a lot of suggestions came in, but that was amazing, and it did help so much because you can communicate to your blue in the face, but you have to have some kind of connection, and that was just, you guys did an amazing job with that. Something Michelle said too stood out to me, because that was the hardest part, is people had questions and we had no answers. And as educators and leaders, you hate not having an answer, but that's when you just needed to be vulnerable and say, you know what, we don't know. And I told our executive team here, when we're sending stuff out, we have to be as transparent as can be and be like, this is what we know right now. Honestly, we know you have this question. We know your next question is, when are we returning to school? We don't know. And at the very least, if people just appreciated, like, okay, I know you understand we have this question. I appreciate you saying you just don't know it, as opposed to just making something. That's where the people get into deeper trouble. It's like, oh, let me give them an answer. It'll feel good for a second, but it kills you in the long run. So that was a tough lesson that I think a lot of people learned. And when you just said, honestly, we don't know, it was frustrating for everyone, but more appreciated. Same thing with dealing with crisis communications now. There's going to be situations, lockdown, social media threats, bullying, whatever, and you're going to get a million questions, because our news cycle is way more faster than it was 10, 20 years ago. And you just have to say, we don't know that yet. Parents, even the news, I remember there were school shootings and stuff years ago. You go back to Columbine, first couple of days was all about the victims in the morning and all this. And now it's 10 minutes later. It's like, what were your procedures? Who's responsible? And that never happened before. But you just need to say, when you don't know, you don't know. So I think that's an important lesson from then. And going forward for sure.
Yeah.
How much we did get to that too, which was funny. Angie said that is some people not enough, and then we got a couple of times like this is too much. Like you guys are
Oh,
saying
I know.
too much.
We
And
got that too.
Yeah.
I think we got that too. Like, you guys sent a lot of emails and updates.
Mhm.
And what we need to realize as communicators is we're not the only ones sending messages too. Sometimes we think we're the only ones, but it's like, no. So we're sending the district message, the school sending their message, ASB is sending a message, their sports coach is sending a message. So it does become overwhelming. But I remember me and our superintendent were talking about that. We got a funny email complaint like, God, you guys are enough with these emails. And we're like, you know what? That's a compliment. You don't want the opposite. Like, what's going on? We never hear from you. So we took that as the ultimate compliment.
Yeah. One of the things that I found when we said we don't know, when we were able to say, yes, like we've been talking about that, we're waiting for the answer, just they needed to know, like, are you even thinking about this? And once they knew we were, like, it was on our mind, that was enough for most of our parents, because when we found the answer, we were going to get back to them because we knew how important it was.
That's so true. Sometimes, whether it's a lockdown, something they heard on the news, they just want to know, Like, Are you aware that there's 4 helicopters over your school? And so don't wait to send out the message until you get information. Say, we know there's an incident going. We're looking into it. We're working with police. Send that right away, because you're right, Angie. That is such a good point. They just like, dude, do you know what's happening?
Yeah.
And then you can tell them, yes, we're aware. We don't have all the answers. And that relieves tensions and curiosities tenfold. So that is a great point.
I'm taking notes because as everything now that I'm thinking about, I'm wrapping up my time here at Arcadia and I'm getting ready to move on. Like, I've been trying to think more like, gosh, what would my response be next year, as a principal? So I have a question for both of you, since I have 2 communications experts in the room. What would
you have Ryan, and I'm also present, but I'm not an expert. I call Ryan.
So you have me, and Ryan's also here. You could have a good shot back at me. I like that.
Fine. I have 2 breathing people who have a brain that can answer some of my questions. Is that better, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. We appreciate the insult. It means you love us. The more you insult us, the more you love us.
Yeah. Okay. That's true.
How we treat each other, me and Ryan.
Yeah.
Exactly. We really, really like each other.
Yes, true.
It is true.
It's true. So my question to you humans is, what advice would you give someone like me, right? I'm stepping into the role. And I think the biggest difference is I am now the person that is responsible for the whole school organization, right? My school side and everything that happens when it comes to events. Like you mentioned, crisis things, you mentioned regular things like bell schedules and assemblies, but specifically about communication, what are some things that maybe I should keep in mind or that you would tell your younger self?
Want me to go while you think, Angie?
What's that?
Do you want me to answer while you think?
Sure, you go. I'll think.
I'll
critique your answer.
Please do. Hold up a sign from 1 to 10 after I'm done. I would say the first thing is the LLT, Listen, Learn Tour. So go in, listen, learn. You don't want to rock the boat as soon as you get there. Figure out what's going on. You may see low-hanging fruit everywhere, and your temptation is going to be, let me pick that. This is going to be easy, but there may be reasons. So listen, learn before you rip anything out of the roots, because that will be very painful for some people. It's a big organization, and school districts, as we know, as fast as Arcadia is, we move slowly. It's because we got to get a lot of people to move in the same direction. So I would move slowly, listen, learn, go on that tour, talk to people. And then from a communication standpoint, it's about what you guys did in the pandemic, relationships, connections, but systems. Systems are very important. So instead of saying, yes, let me post this, let's put this on the website, it's creating systems, empowering people to do it for you, with you, training staff on proper social media, what's good, training them on the website. So you get these systems in place instead of doing everything yourself. So it's that knowledge of how to create a good system, letting go of control of wanting to do everything yourself because you can't do it yourself. I'm a bit of a control freak myself, and I had to learn that over the years. It's like, you got to trust people. give them a good system, they'll do it, teach them well. But training staff, creating systems, and you will, especially, you do have a PIO in your new district, which is great. But they're working with all the schools, so you're going to be a little bit isolated, and they'll help you when you need it. But you're going to have all those daily things and weekly things that you're going to want to get out. But that would be my first advice. And then social media is huge. It's big. It helps with branding and stuff. And then encouraging your teachers and staff to get on there. You can do workshops, have your PI do some workshops, but then never make it like a negative, always just a positive. It's an optional thing. When we first did it, I remember when I was a news reporter, we were forced to get on social media after we did a story, 14-hour day. We're covering a fire. We've just worked 2 shifts back to back. They're like, did you post on social media? Did you post on the website? And you're like, I'm barely alive right now. No, I didn't do that. But so you don't want to add it to people, but you want to make it like, this is an option. If you want to show off your class, your school, your program, please do it. And give them access and do that sort of thing. So that would be kind of my first piece of advice.
Ryan, literally taking notes. So thank you.
Everything Ryan said, and I was thinking specifically from communication, I would think very clearly, and this is something you can even do before you're there, get an idea of what you think you should be the sole messenger of. Like, what are the types of messages that need to come only from the principal? And like Ryan said, what else can and should be distributed? Maybe it's not right now, or maybe it already is, which would be amazing. But it's a way to allow your other administrators or DCs or counselors, whoever it is, to be the expert of that and the owner of that information. And then they get to build that capacity of being the go-to person for something. And you don't have to be that, but really think about what are the things that you get to be the voice of and that you need to be the voice of. Like Wednesday, I got to announce the baccalaureate. That's awesome. I love doing it. Although I didn't like being the one with the microphone 5 years ago. I've grown into that. I don't mind it so much anymore. But like, you get to be the messenger, to announce things like that. But like when there's a lockdown, when there's an emergency, when there was, like this year, a student death, like those best and worst case scenarios, that's you. That's the principal. And I think that initial communication that you send out needs to have all the things that you want the people to feel about you. I know that my first introduction to the community, I very, very deliberately, for better or worse, but I thought a lot about it, signed Angie. And I have signed Angie to every single thing. Not that I think I'm Cher, but I want, this is a really big
like
school.
The opposite of Cher, right? This is you being humble.
Easy over there, Madonna.
I'm not Madonna. No, I'm not Elvis. Because this is a really big school. It has like a really stellar reputation, and many of our families, they didn't navigate the U.S. educational system themselves, and school is an intimidating place. It can be really, really intimidating. And I wanted to present myself as a human being. And, I was a teacher here, part of the community. And that's what I wanted to be. Because I had some credibility in the community already. Like it was a totally different situation. You're coming in new to a community. You need to think like, what do they need from me? Is it Dr. Lou? That makes sense to me. Like, so those are the kinds of things I would think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. The other thing I would say is when you're lucky enough to have a PIO in the district, don't forget about them when you have those big events, when you're announcing the valedictorian. It would have been great for Ryan to know that Angie was going to make this great announcement. So don't forget about the PIO, because they can come over to those big events, make them a little bit more special, maybe get some photos, some video, maybe do a press release, invite the media. So when you have those big events, I know you're doing a million things, and that's where it is tough, because it's like, I'm trying to organize this, I'm doing that. But if you can clue the PIO in, they can help with the publicity part, which you want to shine a spotlight over, whether it's staff or a student. So don't forget to clue them in. Just say, hey, this is happening, whatever, make it quick, and then they can ask the questions. There's nothing worse than like, oh, something has happened recently at one of our schools, like, oh, they were here. Here's some photos, which is great. I appreciate them sending the photos, but it's like, oh, that's a big deal. I actually could have got, professional sports team was on campus at an elementary school. I could have got some reporters there. That could have been even bigger. We could have gone and did some more photos, better quality photos and stuff like that. So don't forget to loop in the PIO. The other thing I would say is use the term our. When you're talking to your parents, your students, it's our district, it's our school. It's not like your school, it's like us. They build that community because I work here, I'm a part of it. Your kid goes here, you're a parent here, you're a part of it. So this is our school. I think that's kind of a good message to send.
No, well, thank you. I took a lot of notes. There's a lot of things to think about. I think one of the things that I've already felt differently about, or I've been thinking about differently is, just knowing that this is going to be my new role, is how visible I am now. And I don't, I think visible, and I think communication goes along with that, because now I'm like, okay, everything I do and say and who I am, I'm myself, but I have to embody myself in a way that's representative of an organization, of the students, of the parents, because, everyone will be looking towards me. Like, I'm the final me. There's no one to hide behind for anything. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yes.
I've been thinking about that piece of it so much, and not in a way to be like, okay, now I'm going to be this different person, but in a way of, there's this weird self-awareness awareness of myself and all the things that I do through this other lens that wasn't there even last week, It wasn't there
People
last
need
week.
you, like your staff, your students, your community, they need you to be a certain thing. And
Yeah.
that's like, how do you bring that need as being yourself? It's something Michelle and I've talked about a lot, actually.
Yeah. So
And I know that staff, they always feel so appreciated when like you just show up at a game. You go to a random softball game, you're at a soccer game, and like it shows like, yeah, they care because they know you're doing well. They probably don't know everything you're doing. Like Angie, today I was with you. You were at Rotary, so not only did you go to honor your two teachers are being honored for Teacher of the Year, you had 3 students there, and then they asked you to speak. You'd be their guest speaker as well, and that's so you did like, I don't know, 8 things in that hour and a half. And then I asked you to do this interview. You probably had 19 meetings before that. You're probably still not done after this. But even
we are missing a cardboard boat race in the pool right now to be with you, Ryan.
Oh my
You
goodness.
should have had somebody out there taking pictures. I guess I should have told you about it.
No, somebody actually emailed us.
Oh, good.
I got back to them.
We have a ton of videos too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. That's the other thing too, is we always tell people, because we have a ton of social media presence. We like to share our stories, but then you'll inevitably get like, oh, you weren't there for this group or that group. And I always tell them, sorry, we couldn't be there. We have a whole internship, try to get people there. We have Apache News trying to get coverage, and we'll still, as much people as we have trying to cover stuff, we'll never get it all. But I always tell them, you feel free to send me a few photos, a brief description, and we will get that posted for you. So it's like, we want to be as equitable as possible, but we still can't have people at every event. So for principals, it's like, just send me a couple photos, send them to the PIO, and they will post it. So that's kind of a good system to just let people know, like, here's who to send them to, here's how to do it. And if you don't have a PIO, give them access to the Facebook page, and just to go ahead and post it directly, and it'll work out well. Michelle, do you have any other questions for us as we,
Okay, let's see. No, but I don't think I have any other questions right now. But what I'd like to do.
Do you have like a 90-day plan?
Yes, I do have a 90-day plan. This is really like a year-long plan. This is my year-long plan. My year-long plan, I'll give you the elevator pitch for it, but I have 3 priorities. It's to build relationships. It's to learn the culture and immerse myself in the culture of the school and just learn about it, all the things that happen there. And then it's just to support. So those are the three things I'm planning on doing for the first 90 days and also the first year. And I think it goes along with what you said about the listening, listening tour, listening, learning tour, learning, listening tour. Yes.
LLT, come on, let's go.
LLT, sorry. I was trying to spell it out so that people could remember what it is again. But I think it's just that. And it's like you said, I am only there to make the transition as seamless as possible. I'm there. I know teachers, it could be really nerve-wracking, having a change in leadership, especially at a school where historically they've had leaders there for a long time, for the best, because it's a great school. So it's just, making sure to make that transition seamless, and really just, everything's built on relationships. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is just learn. And I'm already excited, and yeah, that's it. But what I was going to say is, it would be great later on, maybe, in a year or so, to come back and update you and see if your advice was good, because by then I'll have gone through a year of being a principal.
If it's not, you can feel free to come back.
And then I can definitely critique you and make sure Angie knows about it.
I encourage that no matter what.
Hey, wow. Hey, look.
All right, are you going to tell the story about when you first met?
I was hoping you would forget about the story.
Oh, sorry.
Look,
I've been thinking about it.
You may or may not have a similar experience where you're like, Ryan, I'm not sure about him. Then you'll leave, you go to another place, and you'll call and you'll be like, you know what, Ryan? Dang it, I got it wrong. And you are not the worst person in the world.
Okay, listen, when I come back for the podcast to give the update about how good or questionable your advice is, I will also let you know how I feel about you.
Be completely honest, please.
I will be completely honest.
Angie knows how to be completely honest.
I do. I learned it from Ryan.
Yeah, we took that same class together. You know what's funny, though, what you said, though? It's like, because you're going into this whole new position, this promotion, a whole new school, new people. But what you said is like, they are nervous about change too. So like almost removing yourself, because you're going through all these emotions. Like, what am I going to do? But how do I make it easier for them? Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you focus like, okay, let me make life easy on them, and then my life will be easier. Like, I feel like that is a very good way that you phrase that, Michelle, is they're going through these changes. Change is tough for them. They had this other principal. Now I'm the new person. So like, how do I adjust and adapt to them, and not so much them adjust and adapt to me?
I think that's really well put. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of what, as I've been thinking about things and who I want to be and how I want to show up. And it really is about that, and just like celebrating all the hard work that teachers do. And I'm talking not about just this specifically, but just teachers in general as a profession. Teachers become teachers because they want to make a difference in kids' lives. And, I don't ever want to forget that, because I think that alone should be celebrated, and we should keep that in mind as we are working with teachers and interacting with them and building programs and stuff. So
that's awesome. One last thing I want to get your guys' thoughts on before we wrap up is, as most people are at graduation season, very close to it, one thing that we do here, and I hate to give JT more credit for this, but it's amazing. I've actually talked about it on this podcast before and given other districts the idea. I think we borrowed it and others should, is the grad runs. Those things are an amazing end of the year celebration. Angie, I'll kind of give my version of how I think it was started and how I think it's running now.
Yeah.
But it's basically the seniors from the high school go back to their elementary schools. I believe they do it at lunch, the midday last week of school. Maybe they start doing it after school that last finals week. They do it in their cap and gowns. They let obviously the elementary schools all know, okay, the seniors are coming back this time, this day. The kids make all these signs, class of 2024. They line the hallways. They have music playing. The elementary kids are super excited. They get very inspired because they want to be big high schoolers too. The high schoolers love coming back and they get to see their old teachers. Their teachers are in tears. They get to connect with them, see them. They haven't seen them in a few years. The pictures are amazing. The stories are amazing. So if you're not doing a grad run, a grad walk, I highly suggest it. It takes a little bit of organization for sure. And I think we iterated over the years, but now it's kind of seamless. Everyone knows what's going on. I think ASB kind of runs that, kind of takes the helm on that. But it's an amazing event. I love going to them. Anything else, Angie, as a principal, to help kind of like, if you're not doing this, like, how do we start this?
For Grad Run, I think that that's something that just like has fit into our like things that we had naturally built. So we have a senior activity day where students were released at lunch. So it's when we do our senior talent show. There's like a little bit of nuts and bolts information, but it's mainly about celebrating seniors. And then once they're released for lunch, then they're able to go to their elementary schools. It started with one elementary school, and then I think another saw it and they wanted to add on. Then a middle school wanted to add on. So now not every grad, but hundreds of our graduates like get to go through their old hallways of their elementary and middle school, see their old teachers. Sometimes their old principals are still there. And Ryan, as directed, Michelle can attest to this. Today, I instructed everyone who will be at a grad run to get the people at the front of the line pumped up and ready to go and interact with the kids. I think that, I think that Michelle's landing in such a great place. I'm already so excited to see some of the programs they have, like peer mentoring. It's a program we talked about here for so long. I'm so excited to see how they do it and how they organize it. They have a totally different organization of duties, which is really interesting. But I think that as far as the stuff we do here, I don't need to give Michelle any of the advice. She's been involved with so many things. But the one thing that I would encourage her to take is actually something that you started, Ryan, something like the DCI, the digital communications intern that we're just starting at the high school. I've told you, like, we're starting media interns partnered with different programs within the high school because social media is crucial. It's I look on social media of our different organizations, like I can't remember where this was or, like what time do I need to be there? So I'll look on like the marching band spaghetti dinner post. So I think that when you find the programs that you want to highlight and that they need to have a social media presence, starting those media interns, because it really wasn't about just the programs. It is harder and harder to get into college. It is so much more competitive. And we need to be creating these unique leadership opportunities for our students that's truly a service. Like these internships are truly serving a need. Our tech internship that we started a few years ago, they repair the Chromebooks that every student needs to access, their classes. So I think when you find the opportunity and the need, and it, is the genesis of something that's going to serve students in the long run and our programs, then it's a win-win. So I would just say, like, be really mindful of looking for those opportunities.
Yeah. I think those goes back to my point about creating systems. Like internships are basically just a great system because they're rewarding for the student, the administrators. We get so much out of the students, whether it's medical internship, it's my digital communication interns, but that's like, how do we get those win-wins? How do we get more for less? And that's kind of the impetus of the internship was, I have all these things I want to cover, all these things I want to do. I can't do them. I don't have the money. It's like, wait, we have all these amazingly talented kids that are looking for experience. I'm looking for help, like perfect marriage. But to Angie's point too, there's so many different opportunities for that. And you're creating so much value for students. You're saving a ton of money. So those systems, those are what leave a mark at a school and a district. I can take 2 weeks off and I know our social media is still going to be firing. I know our kids are still going to be covering every event. In fact, I'm in Hawaii right now. I haven't worked in 3 weeks and things are still going.
You got there really fast. I just had lunch with you.
Yeah.
I know. But
your background looks very realistic. That office background you have there.
But that's a great point that Angie made. Like, that's how you make a difference is like, what gaps do we have? What is going to be a benefit to maybe students, to our budget, to our administrators, to our parents, our community? And I think the high school does such a good job about that. We kind of forget like, oh, they have this program, whatever it is. And there's so many those are some things to look for opportunities. And I do like what Angie said. We love what we have here in Arcadia, but there's so many districts and other schools are doing so many good things and programs that they're really innovative. It's like, ooh, maybe we can borrow some of that as well.
Well, Angie and I have already officially started a principals coalition.
Yes.
We have 2 members.
Coalition of 2, and plus we're making Diamond Bar join.
Yeah, and we're making Diamond Bar join because, So
that's one of the things I did here is a couple of years ago, because we have our big regional state groups and all that, but I started a San Gabriel Valley PIO group. We meet twice a month virtually. Once in a blue moon, we'll meet in person. But that helps because that's PD. So you guys starting that will be so valuable. Like when we had the rainstorms earlier this year, I got on with my local PIOs, like, who's closing down? What are you doing? So the more you're at least knowing what they're doing, not knowing what they're doing or why they're doing it, because you'll get parents like, well, Diamond Bar's not closing down, Walnut's not closing down. Why?
Right.
You can explain, well, they have 4 trees through the roof. That's why they're closing down. You know, stuff like that. So that, I think you guys doing that is a great idea.
Yeah.
All right, real quick. So if you don't have a PIO, you're a new principal maybe, or just looking for help, check out Nichols Strategies. They will help you with all your communication needs, crisis, planning, bond, parcel tax, all that. Peach Jar, they take care of all your flyers. They are amazing. They have new like AI systems and PDF readers. Their accessibility, which new federal law on our most recent podcast, we talked about that. They take care of all that. And speaking of Peach Jar, Michelle, you asked about this story.
We were so close. We were so
I would love to. This is the perfect segue from ads
Michelle, you
into
definitely have heard this, right?
I don't know. We'll see.
So, yeah. So Peach Jar, proud sponsor of the School PR podcast. That was my first kind of big project when I was new PIO. I was like, this would be great for the schools instead of all these paper flyers going home, especially elementary, like they're just stuck in backpacks. Let's get this digital system. Let's get up to speed, you know. So I had to meet with all the stakeholders. I'm the new guy, and I had to go to the high school. And so I met with all the stakeholders at the high school, all the bigwigs. And so me and the guy from Peach Jar are there kind of explaining, here's how it works and here's what to know. And there's somebody in the back of the room just scowling. Like, remember, Michelle, those Keystone, those bitter beer face commercials where it's just like, man, this person is like, what happened? They just eat a Sour Patch Kid that's not going down well? Or this person is just like killing me with that glare. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I think that's the ASB director, Angie Dillman. And then she raised her hand and asked this question in this tone that like pierced through my soul of basically saying, what in the world is this? This is the worst thing ever. And I was scared of Angie from that day to this day.
Well,
Did
please,
you
I do like you're a little bit afraid of me. But I have to be honest, like just the other day, I was telling Michelle, like there were times, it wasn't when we were out during COVID, it was when we were reopening schools in that hybrid. That is the most stressful time of ever running a school, was that reopening. Mm-hmm. And I definitely was so stressed out. I feel like I lost my cool with our team. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm ashamed at the way like I communicated. Because I was afraid. And I think when I look back at that, I was not in the leadership mindset at all. And I was afraid. I was afraid that this was going to be something that was going to land on my particular office, and it was going to be an inundating of local businesses, and I'm vetting, and I didn't understand what it was going to do for us because it has done so much. What I heard is this is going to land on someone at the high school, and I know it's going to be me, and I'm not going to be able to manage it. And
you heard that because you weren't listening.
Maybe, probably.
You were so upset. I'm like, oh my God, who is this Angie person? She wants to kill me. I don't even know her.
So embarrassing. I am so embarrassed.
Would you like to 10 years later publicly apologize?
I apologize. It was not okay. It wasn't professional.
I was going to say, I feel like this heartfelt explanation and her being vulnerable about her fears.
I'm feeling bad now.
Yeah, now I'm like, come on, Ryan. Cut her some slack.
Embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. I totally deserve it.
It wasn't that bad, but it stood out because that is not really the Angie I know now. And if you weren't unprofessional, I can just see the salt. It was a little salty, that comment of
Michelle also this week told me the same thing. It wasn't as bad as you think. I'm like,
no.
I hear you guys. That means it was bad. I get it. I agree. I totally
No,
agree.
but as I said earlier, and I know you hate to hear this, we are very similar. And one of the things that we're similar with is when we have an opinion, we are bad poker players because we wear that on our face and on our sleeve. So when one of us is upset, we're upset.
If
And
it's something that matters.
right. And you could just tell you were not thrilled. And I was mortified. You scared the heck out of me.
Yes. I
But
have
I was
been
like,
told
oh
I
my
can be
God.
intimidating.
I was like, this thing sounds amazing. It's going to be great. And let me just go to the high school. I'll explain it real quick. And I was like, oh, wait a second. This is not going well.
We were in the old dingy boardroom.
Yeah.
Like everything about it was depressing. My attitude was the most depressing. I have to tell you, when Michelle interviewed to be AP, I've told her this, that when she left the room, it felt like the lights got turned down. Like it got 50% less bright in the room when she left. Of course, the lights didn't change, but she just brought so much energy and so much positivity. I feel like I did the opposite at the Peach Jar meeting. Like my presence was a dark cloud that like made it even gloomier in there.
You thought you were going to have to do everything, and then you soon realized. And it's funny, but that was a common reaction that we got with Peach Jar through all the schools because it was change. We talked about change, and it's tough. You got to be careful. You got to move slow in districts. So that was a huge change because for 50 years, every school was doing the flyers in the fourth grade packet and whatever the homeroom was, and so everyone is upset. So you were not the only one. Your reaction was a little more salty than the rest, but everyone had a similar thing. But do we hear a word from anyone? Now everyone loves it. They thank me. We save so much. And it was like, I'm taking this on to save time at all the schools. So now all the schools, they don't have to do anything. There's no packets to distribute.
Yeah.
When the companies come in, they just say, nope, talk to Ryan, send it through this. It's on our website. So it now in hindsight, everyone's like, no, we love it. It's amazing. Can't imagine life without it. But it was change. And even though, getting back to Michelle being a new principal, even though the change is good, it is still change, which people view as bad. So how you do it is key.
And I think and it's not just the change. It was thinking through how people are going to perceive something like, hey, this is a change and change is scary. But if this works, it should take all of this off your plate. And I think if I didn't catch that, or that was being new and not knowing how we were going to respond to it. I think it's asking those questions of people who've been in the organization for a while. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. How do you think people will respond? What would, it's a change. What would they fear about it? And then kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's okay, we're going to put the little flyer out here on this to see what they think about this. What do you think the reaction is so we can predict? I mean, I do that with David and stuff. We get a call from a reporter, here's what I think the questions are going to be. This is what we should be prepared to answer. So that's great advice. It's okay, there's going to be a reaction. Let's help. Let's try and predict the reaction.
Yeah.
Michelle, we wish you the best of luck.
Well, thank you.
You're going to be great.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm super excited. I also think I see it as kind of just expanding, the relationships I have here and just adding to it. I really believe it's that way. And so I'm so sorry. I really believe it's that way. So, it's going to be great. And I'll give a new update. I definitely have to let you know if your advice is sound or not so sound.
We'll have the year check-in next year.
Yes.
A veteran principal of 1 year.
Yes.
And
I predict that I will look more stressed.
You're gonna have all this gray hair and all this. Yeah, it'll age. The presidents 4 years later, they come out. They're like, "Wow, you look like."
So true.
Yeah,
I
get it.
I looked 5 years ago. I'm like, who's this baby? I was a baby.
I love you guys' your principal group that you're going to get together. I'd be honored to come and do some guest speaking and share stories and all that sort of stuff. But that's really good that you guys are doing that. I think the networking that's half the battle, and then you just know somebody oh, they just dealt with this last year. Let me call them real quick. But if you're not connecting with people, then you don't have that. Anyway. Angie, Michelle, thank you so much. Angie, we do give each other a hard time, but we can
definitely tell it's out of love. I mean, I'm sitting here, it's totally out of love. Everybody at home, it's all love.
Agreed.
Next time, Michelle, remind me to tell the Netflix filming story at the high school.
Okay. Netflix filming.
Remember when the Amy Poehler movie, you did
Yeah,
not?
I remember.
Okay, I feel like we
Stand
should.
behind all that. Like, I don't know what you're
I
talking
feel
about.
like we should go before the love turns to not love.
Well, that turned out well too. We had some difference of opinions, but it turned out well.
Yeah.
Turned out well. Hey, thank you guys so much. I think you guys are both amazing leaders, both amazing in your field, great communicators, doing amazing things. So
You too, Ryan.
it was
Thank you, Ryan.
an honor to have you guys on. We'll do it again. And please, when is In the Principal's Office podcast going to fire back up? That's what we really want to know.
We are thinking about it. We will
thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you don't do it, we understand. You're busy being a principal. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, bye.